Alrighty, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hajim Zero here, back with another quick movie review. This one was very, very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. This is a few dollars more. It stars Clint Eastwood and Van Cleef, I believe. I may be mispronouncing his name, and I feel so bad about doing it because he did a good job in this. And even the villain that the actor that played the villain, I think his name is Gian Marie something. And again, I had to briefly skim it. I am recording this as soon as I finish watching it. Usually, when I record these, I watch them, and then I do the review like later, like say 2 or 3 days. Well, 2 or 1 day later, But this one I immediately had to do it because I liked how it was done. But pretty much what I found out is that, and this is kind of a contradiction if you see my last video with a few dollars less. With Sergio Leone, they say it's a trilogy, but technically not really. Even though you could write in, you know, the sequel, or right after a few dollars less had ended, if it was a couple years later or right after that whole situation with, the man with no name. Even though in each movie he does have a name, it's just that it's not stapled on there. Excuse me, but uh pretty much this movie's about pretty much two bounty hunters. One of them is a former colonel, and his story was very, very interesting. The way they had written the whole thing, you would think they were just teaming up to get this bounty, but at the very end of the movie, it was something much more. And I have a feeling not that many people are going to watch this, so I'm going to go ahead and spoil it just to tell you that now. So pretty much, oh man, something's in my eye. Give me, one thing I hate about summer, folks, you would think it'd be spring where your allergies and eyes and those start acting up, but it isn't. But going back to this, uh, pretty much that's the whole story. They're trying to catch this known gang that's terrorizing certain parts of New Mexico, mainly with the killing and stealing. And I think one the main villain, he was in prison at the beginning of the movie. He already had a bounty on him, and he was cocky that how he got caught. I think he walked by his wanted poster and he put 2 zeros next to the 1,000, and then he had got caught, and then his gang had broke him out, and I think his bounty had jumped up even higher. That's what I'm vaguely remembering, because I didn't watch the whole thing in one sitting. But pretty much Clint Eastwood's character, again, just like the last one, he just so happens to be wandering through. He sees this, he goes after it. Him and this other guy team up because he knew he'll need someone, to do what he was planning to do. And the thing is, I really like both of these characters because they're so different, but yet they both have a certain skill set. Of course, this guy who's a former colonel, his weapons and tactics are a lot more, much more punctual. And even all the weapons that he had, like when it first, doing his introduction scene of going after someone, he has like a whole arsenal on his horse, like a couple rifles and a few pistols. And his stuff was a lot better than Clint's character. He had like a stock on one of the guns he had back then, and it looked crisp, clean. Like, I was like, oh shit, it really caught my attention. And I was so mesmerized by his the dude's character. I think his name was Douglas Mortimer. And the best way I could describe these two, I don't know if there are any anime fans in the house that's watching this video, but it does go hand in hand. If you've seen an anime called Samurai Champloo, there are two characters on there. One of them is a former samurai, and then the other one is pretty much a somewhat of a pirate, but he's not that that criminal like, because he didn't have a bounty or anything on his head, and even in the series. But one is much more, traditional, and the other one isn't. And that's the vibe I get with both of these characters that I see in the movie. The good thing is that they're not trying to kill each other. There is a moment in the beginning where they somewhat have like a banner, shooting each other's hats off, but they didn't kill each other. And I guess that was a sign of respect, because they knew that both of them were bounty hunters, or that they knew about each other being bounty hunters. But of course, they didn't want to kill one another. It was more like back off my territory and property. But when they started talking and how they can split it, and they were setting in motion to do certain things to increase the bounty on the gang. At least that's how I saw it. But the villain also in this did a very good job. It was the same bad guy from A Few Dollars Less, the one that played Ramon. And I think in this movie he did a better performance. He was a lot more menacing. And even if you see A Few Dollars Less, the way they do the close-ups on his eyes, actually on all of them, they do a lot of visual good cues with just the eyes by itself. And pretty much the big spoiler is that he had raped and killed well, he had the villain had killed this this dude's this woman's husband, and then had raped her. And then in the middle of the raping, she ended up shooting herself. And come to find out, at the very end of the movie, the woman was actually Mortimeyer's sister. And you really don't know that to the end. He didn't go on no monologue talking about I will seek revenge and this, that, and the other. He played his cards right, and he had dude to help him. And even at the very end, he didn't want the reward. He just wanted revenge for his sister. And even Clint was like, nah. Indirectly, he was saying, out of respect, we both earned this. And it was a lot of good cinematic visual cues. It was one part right before the bad guy gets killed. He has this thing before he goes into a duel. He'll play this lullaby thing that's on his watch, and it's pretty much the time to duel. He'll say, when the music stops, that's when you go. And at one point, he tried to cheat. I think he had shot the gun out of Mortimeyer's hand. And then when they were standing, he said, we're going to go ahead and do it. But in a way, he had cheated because the gun is on the ground. So it was going to take him more time to grab the gun and to shoot him. And the most gangster thing I've seen, Clint shows up with a rifle, and he points it at the bad guy, and he's shaking his head no, and he takes off his gun belt and he gives it to Mortimeyer, and then he has the watches. He has one of the watches anyway, and he sits down and he's playing it, and he says, now it's a fair fight, pretty much. And I was like, that's the most gangster shit I ever seen. Of course, Mortimeyer shoots the bad guy, and it's over, and then he spills everything and tells him. And the funny thing, the bounty had went up in the story because they successfully had robbed that bank, and they were doing a plan, and then the plan didn't work, and they got away. And then they had took some of the money and had hid it, and then of course Clint went back to go and get it at the very end, on top of the bounties of every single members in the group. And another good thing about this is, like, in between of the film, they were playing back and forth on how to kill these dudes and whatnot. Even the bad guy wasn't as dumb as he thought he was. He knew that the dude was a bounty hunter or bounty killer, whatever you want to say. Couldn't really remember how, but you can read it on Wiki if you're really interested, and we can have a conversation about it. But it was just certain cinematic things that a film nerd would like have a wet dream over. The two parts of it is how he never revealed it was a vengeance plot the entire time, and then two, with the whole duel thing, and how he showed up with the rifle and he said, don't move or I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to give him my gun belt, and we're going to do this right without you cheating. And I think it was more like an honorable thing, and at the same thing, going back to the samurai, it's the same thing in their films. So, just seeing that visual cue, and then even when in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I think it's the same location. because they were standing in a circle, and it's that famous scene from that movie, and it was a mirror indirectly to it of the Mexican standoff. And again, I haven't seen it yet, so I only seen that scene. I don't know the whole context building up to it. And I know Cinefix had talked about it before. I think it was the most iconic, you know, cinematic shots or something like that. And some of the westerns are on there, of course. Searchers and the Mexican standoff between Clint, and ironically, I think it's with the same actors too, all three of them. And I just really enjoyed this. You know, I liked how this was a different story than, of course, A Few Dollars Less. And the only indirect annoyance that I did have was Clint in the first movie. I think I failed to mention is when he does one of his plans, he gets caught by the bad guy and he ends up getting beaten up. And the same thing happens here. Like, he gets caught, you know, I think taking, not really taking the money, but he was snooping in a little safe house with the money, and he had tossed it in the apple tree. And then that's when him and the bounty hunter, the other guy he partnered with, they end up getting beat up. And I was like, yeah, that was a similar trope, and I wish they changed it, because everything else about this movie, of course, was different from the last one, and that's what I really liked about it. Yeah. So pretty much, you know how they say, when most cowboy movies are always, you know, pretty much the same, and they're not. It's just, you know, seeing both movies, even though it's a somewhat of a trilogy within itself, and Clint is doing it, it's still a different story. It takes a wholly different tide. It's like a Greek mythology story, even though you know all the characters, yeah, or characters within there, you tell their story and it's something completely different. So, you know, it's the same similar beats, but it's a different tone. So, you know, again, I might be missing some things off. One other fact I wanted to say about the westerns and their stories, I don't know if I mentioned in the last one, was of course corrupted, you know, law enforcement, and I think it was in this film as well. I can't really remember the scene, but it didn't hit me until I watched it again, and I think it has something to do with you know, corrupt officials doing something in this film. I can't remember, but when I was watching, I remember I didn't say anything about it when I was doing the first review. So that's another additional fact about, you know, westerns and their formula a little bit. Another good formula, of course, dude riding off into the sunset. Of course, the final shot was of Clint, you know, riding off with the money and the dead body bounty, and Nordermeyer had more of the iconic, you know, riding off into the sunset. So, you know, it was nice, of course, classic cinema homage to that. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Again, I'll see you in the next one. I think the next one is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And then I think after that is Hanging 'em High. But out of all of Clint Eastwood's ones, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the most famous one. Something's telling me I'm wrong, that that's what the next one's gonna be. But again, I got two more of these to review, and so far I'm really enjoying them. So talk to you guys next time. Sayonara.